Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And today we're going to get into something I think we all could use a little bit of help with, and that is negotiation.
Absolutely.
We've got
What's one of those skills,
incredible insights from a book
that we think
on mastering this essential skill.
we need to kind of brush up on every once in a while?
And trust me, by the end of this, you will be ready to negotiate anything.
Absolutely. And, we often think of negotiation as this high stakes business thing, but it's so much more than think about it. You negotiate every single day, whether you realize it or not.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Deciding where to eat with your family, figuring out weekend plans with friends, even asking for that well-deserved raise.
Oh, yeah.
It's all negotiation.
All the time. Yeah, it's a constant give and take.
Yeah.
And one of the most powerful tools in your negotiation toolbox is something we often overlook, the power of no.
Now, I know what you're thinking.
Yeah.
No sounds so negative.
Yeah.
But it's not about shutting down the conversation.
Mhm.
It's about strategically using it to your advantage.
Right. Think of it as a pause button.
Okay.
Saying no allows you to step back, gather your thoughts, and make informed decisions. It prevents you from getting swept up in the moment and making concessions you'll later regret.
It's like setting healthy boundaries, right?
It is.
You're protecting your interests.
That's a great way to put it.
And make sure you're not getting steamrolled.
Yeah. And what's interesting? Saying no can actually build trust and respect. It shows the other party that you're thoughtful, that you have standards, and that you're not just going to roll over.
There's this story about a water softener salesman who actually increased his sales by encouraging customers to say no.
Huh.
He'd start by acknowledging their hesitation and say, it's perfectly fine if you don't need a water softener, just tell me no and I'll move on.
Brilliant strategy.
Right.
Because it takes the pressure off, it creates a more honest conversation and often leads to the customer opening up about their real needs.
And once you have that open dialogue, you can really start to find solutions that work for both parties.
Absolutely. Now, another critical aspect of successful negotiation is understanding and managing your own neediness.
Oh, neediness can be a real deal breaker.
Yep.
It makes you seem desperate and gives the other party all the leverage.
Absolutely. And it can manifest in so many ways. Talking too much, rushing to close a deal over promising, or even getting overly emotional. These are all signs that you're too invested in a specific outcome.
So how do we spot these needy behaviors in ourselves? Because let's face it, we can all get a little needy sometimes.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
One helpful technique is to create a neediness checklist.
Okay.
Ask yourself, am I interrupting constantly? Am I over-explaining? Am I sending those long, rambling emails?
Oh, I'm definitely guilty of the rambling
Yeah.
emails. I just want to make sure they have all the information.
I get it, but remember, less is often more in negotiation. It's about being concise, clear, and confident.
So if you find yourself checking off a lot of those neediness boxes,
Yeah.
how do you dial it back?
The key is to shift your focus from outcomes to the actions and strategies you can control. Remember, you can't control the other party's response, but you can control your own preparation, your communication, and your approach.
It's like that saying, control the controllables. Focus on what you can influence and let go of the rest.
Exactly.
Easier said than done sometimes.
It's much easier said than done, but the more you practice it, the better you get at it.
Yeah.
It's also helpful to remind yourself that you always have options. You're not desperate for any one particular outcome.
That's such an important point.
Yeah.
Knowing you have alternatives gives you the confidence to walk away if the deal isn't right.
It's like that feeling of walking into a store knowing you don't have to buy anything.
Yeah.
You browse, you consider, and you only make a purchase if it truly meets your needs and your budget.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
It takes the pressure off and allows you to make more rational decisions.
And, this idea of focusing on what you can control reminds me of a story about a guy named Brian. He was leading a team, and they were facing intense pressure to close deals at the end of the quarter.
Oh, I bet the clients were pulling out all the stuff.
Oh, they were. But Brian, instead of caving to the pressure, kept his team focused on their company's core values and long-term goals. He knew that compromising their principles for a short-term win would ultimately hurt them in the long run.
So he held firm even when it's tough.
He did, and it paid off. They didn't hit their numbers that quarter, but they maintained their reputation for integrity, and in the end, that earned them even more business.
That's a great example of how sticking to your principles can actually lead to greater success in the long run.
It's also a reminder that negotiation isn't just about winning at all costs. It's about finding solutions that are sustainable and beneficial for everyone involved.
Now, another key concept we need to discuss is the difference between building relationships and earning respect in negotiations.
Yeah, this is a crucial distinction. So often we think we need to be liked in order to be successful in negotiation, but that can actually backfire.
I've definitely fallen into that trap. Trying too hard to be everyone's friend can make you seem inauthentic
Uh,
and even compromise your position.
Absolutely. When you're too focused on being likable, you might find yourself making concessions you wouldn't otherwise make just to avoid conflict or maintain a friendly atmosphere.
And that can send the message that you're not really serious about your goals or your standards.
Right. Genuine respect, on the other hand, is earned through competence, reliability, and integrity.
It's about showing up prepared, being clear about your needs, and following through on your commitments.
Exactly. And you know what? True respect often leads to stronger and more sustainable relationships.
Because it's based on mutual trust and admiration, not just surface level pleasantries.
Exactly. And this reminds me of a story about a guy named Lou. He was in the middle of a complex negotiation, and he was so focused on maintaining a good relationship with the other party that he kept making concessions.
Oh, I can see where this is going. Trying to save the relationship can sometimes lead to giving away too much.
Absolutely, and that's what happened to Lou. He was so worried about ruffling feathers that he ended up making the other side suspicious of his motives. They started to wonder, why is he being so agreeable? What's he hiding?
Oh no, so his attempt to be friendly actually backfired?
It did. The negotiations stalled, and in the end, they didn't reach a deal.
That's a great reminder that authenticity and clear communication are essential in building trust and respect.
Absolutely. And sometimes that means being willing to have tough conversations and stand up for what you believe in, even if it means risking a little discomfort in the short term.
Now, speaking of discomfort, another powerful concept in negotiation is the idea of embracing the next decision.
Yeah, this is about reframing the way we think about mistakes.
Okay.
We tend to view mistakes as failures, but in negotiation, they're actually opportunities for learning and growth.
So instead of beating ourselves up over a bad decision, we should view it as a stepping stone to a better one.
Exactly. It's about having that growth mindset, that willingness to acknowledge our mistakes, learn from them, and move on.
And remember, negotiation is a process. It's a series of decisions.
Right.
You're not going to get everything perfect every time.
No, you're not. You're going to make mistakes, and that's okay.
Right.
And this reminds me of a story about a senior VP named Mike. He was negotiating a major deal with a Fortune 100 company, and early on, he made a terrible decision.
Oh no, what happened?
He revealed a key piece of information that he should have held back. It gave the other party leverage, and it almost cost him the deal.
That's a negotiator's nightmare.
It was, but here's the thing. Instead of trying to cover up his mistake or blame someone else, Mike owned it. He went back to the other party, admitted his error, and said, look, I messed up, but I'm committed to making this right. How can we move forward together?
Wow, that takes a lot of courage.
It does, but that honesty and vulnerability disarmed the other party. They respected his willingness to take responsibility, and in the end, they were able to salvage the deal and even expand it.
That's incredible. So even a major mistake can be turned into an opportunity for growth and success.
Absolutely. It's all about how you handle it, embracing the next decision, acknowledging your mistakes, and being willing to course correct are essential skills for any successful negotiator.
So how do we make sure those next decisions are good ones, especially after we've made a mistake and we're feeling a bit rattled?
One powerful technique is to focus on building a clear vision for the other party. It's about understanding their needs, their goals, their concerns, and creating a shared vision for a successful outcome.
So instead of pushing our own agenda, we need to step into their shoes and see the situation from their perspective.
Exactly. It's about asking insightful questions, actively listening to their responses, and demonstrating genuine empathy for their situation.
And sometimes that means asking tough questions that challenge our own assumptions.
Absolutely. And this reminds me of a fascinating story about a doctor who had to make a critical decision regarding a premature baby. The doctor was hesitant to transfer the baby to another hospital, even though the parents requested it. He believed it was too risky.
Oh, I can imagine how stressful that situation must have been for everyone involved.
Oh, it was incredibly stressful.
Yeah.
The parents were understandably anxious and frustrated. The doctor was trying to do what he thought was best for the baby, but he wasn't fully communicating his reasoning or acknowledging the parents' emotional needs.
So how did they break through that impasse?
Someone asked the doctor a simple but powerful question. How much risk are you willing to take with my child's life?
Wow, that's a really thought-provoking question.
It forced the doctor to step back from his own assumptions and truly consider the parent's perspective. It made him realize that he hadn't fully explained the risks and benefits of both options, and he hadn't allowed them to truly participate in the decision-making process.
So that one question shifted the entire dynamic of the negotiation.
It opened up a more honest and compassionate conversation, and
Yeah.
in the end, they were able to reach a decision that everyone felt good about.
That's a powerful example of how asking the right questions can lead to a deeper understanding, greater clarity, and ultimately a better outcome.
It's also a reminder that even in high-stakes situations, genuine empathy and open communication can make all the difference.
Now, another crucial element of successful negotiation is adopting a blank slate mindset.
Yeah.
This means approaching every negotiation without preconceived notions, assumptions, or expectations.
Yeah, it's so easy to walk into a negotiation with all sorts of baggage, past experiences, biases, and even those stories we tell ourselves about the other party.
Oh, totally. We might assume they're going to be difficult or that they're only out for themselves.
Exactly, and those assumptions can create a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you walk in expecting a fight, you're more likely to find one.
So how do we clear those mental slates and approach negotiations with a fresh perspective?
It starts with self-awareness. Recognize your own biases, your own triggers, and those patterns of thinking that might be clouding your judgment.
And remind yourself that you don't actually know what the other party is thinking or feeling until you've taken the time to listen and understand their perspective.
Exactly. And, you know, those assumptions often stem from our own insecurities, our need to be right, or our fear of losing.
So it's really important to do that inner work to address those limiting beliefs and approach negotiations with a more open and curious mind.
Absolutely. And there's a story about a company that missed out on a lucrative partnership because they made assumptions about the other company's interests.
Oh no, what happened?
They assumed the other company wouldn't be interested in their technology. They had this preconceived notion that the other company was too big, too established, and too focused on their own products.
So they didn't even bother to reach out.
They did, but their approach was half-hearted. They didn't really believe in the possibility of a partnership, so they didn't put in the effort to truly understand the other company's needs and how their technology could add value.
And I'm guessing the other company sensed that lack of enthusiasm.
They did, and they ended up partnering with a different company that was more genuinely interested in collaborating.
That's such a missed opportunity.
Oh.
It shows how limiting assumptions can be.
It does. It's a reminder that we never really know what's possible until we open ourselves up to new ideas and new ways of thinking.
So if we're going to approach negotiations with a blank slate mindset, we need to back that up with thorough research.
Absolutely. Research is essential for understanding the other party's needs, their constraints, their goals, and even their negotiation style.
It's about gathering as much information as possible to make informed decisions and anticipate potential obstacles.
Exactly. And it's not about trying to find some secret weakness to exploit. It's about building a foundation of knowledge and understanding so you can negotiate from a position of strength and confidence.
And you know what? Thorough research can help you uncover unexpected opportunities for collaboration.
Oh, absolutely.
You might find that your goals are actually more aligned than you initially thought.
That happens all the time, yeah.
Right.
Research can really open your eyes to possibilities you might not have even considered.
And sometimes research can reveal potential roadblocks that you can address proactively, preventing them from derailing the negotiation later on.
Absolutely. And this reminds me of a fascinating example from history during the Vietnam War. North Vietnamese agents meticulously researched American pilots before interrogating them.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize they went to that extent.
They did. They used library archives to gather information about the pilots' families, their backgrounds, their interests, even their favorite foods.
So they were using that information to build rapport and exploit emotional vulnerabilities.
Exactly. They were tailoring their interrogation tactics to each individual pilot, which gave them a significant psychological advantage.
That's pretty intense. It's a reminder that information is power. And in any negotiation, the party with the most knowledge has a distinct advantage.
Absolutely. Of course, in a business context, you're not trying to psychologically manipulate someone,
Right.
but you are trying to understand their motivations, their constraints, their goals, and how you can create a win-win situation.
And thorough research can be the key to unlocking that understanding.
It really can.
Now, once you've done your research, it's crucial to take detailed notes throughout the negotiation.
Yeah, note-taking is so important.
Right.
It helps you track key details, identify inconsistencies, and make sure you're both on the same page.
And good notes can also help you spot patterns in the other party's behavior, revealing their priorities and their willingness to compromise.
Right. It's like having a written record of the entire conversation so you can refer back to it later and make sure you haven't missed anything crucial.
Absolutely. And you know what? Detailed notes can also protect you from getting taken advantage of.
Oh, tell me more. So,
Well, sometimes the other party might try to change the terms of the agreement later on, claiming they never agreed to something.
oh, that's so frustrating.
Right. And it happens more often than you think.
Yeah, does it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's terrible.
But if you have meticulous notes, you can point to the specific moment in the conversation where they made a certain statement or agreed to a certain term.
Yeah, so you have that evidence to back you up.
Exactly. And this reminds me of a story about two brothers, John and Jeff, who were negotiating a business deal. The other party had quoted them a price based on a certain number of hours and deliverables.
Okay, sounds pretty straightforward so far.
It did. But when they received the final proposal, the numbers were all over the place. The hours were inflated, the deliverables were different, and the total price was much higher than they had initially agreed upon.
Oh no, they tried to pull a fast one.
They did.
Yeah.
But luckily, John and Jeff had taken detailed notes throughout their discussions. They were able to point out the discrepancies and question the other party's credibility.
So they called them out on their shady tactics.
They did. And you know what? It turned out that the other party hadn't even bothered to keep track of the details. They were just hoping John and Jeff wouldn't notice.
Wow, that's so unprofessional.
It is, and it just goes to show how important meticulous note-taking can be. It can protect you from misunderstandings, inconsistencies, and even outright deception.
Absolutely.
And let's be honest, we've all been in situations where we've struggled to remember specific details from a meeting. Good notes can be a lifesaver.
They really can.
Now, another important principle in negotiation is knowing when to hold back information.
Yes.
Sometimes it's tempting to put all your cards on the table, right? To be completely transparent and open.
It is, but in negotiation, premature disclosure can actually weaken your position.
Because it gives the other party more leverage.
Exactly. They might use that information to negotiate with other parties, or they might use it to try to extract more concessions from you.
So it's about being strategic about what you reveal and when.
Absolutely. And there's a story about a guy named Arthur who was recruiting a top candidate for his company. He was so eager to impress this candidate that he revealed the full financial package before getting a commitment.
Oh, I can see where this is going. He got a little too excited and showed his hand too early.
He did, and the candidate, being as talented as he was, used that information to negotiate with other companies, ultimately starting a bidding war that Arthur couldn't win.
Oh no. So his eagerness to share information backfired.
It did. If he had held back and waited for a commitment from the candidate before revealing the full offer, he might have been able to secure the candidate without getting into a bidding war.
That's a great reminder that patience and strategic disclosure are crucial in any negotiation.
It is. And it's not about being deceitful or hiding information. It's about controlling the flow of information to create more balanced and fair negotiation.
Now, speaking of controlling the flow, another powerful tool in negotiation is the agenda.
The agenda is often overlooked,
Oh,
but it can be incredibly effective in setting the stage for a productive and successful negotiation.
so it's not just about listing the topics you want to discuss.
No, it's much more strategic than that. A well-structured agenda allows you to control the flow of the conversation, manage expectations, and keep the negotiation on track.
So how do we create an agenda that gives us that level of control?
We're going to dive into that in part 2 of our deep dive.
Oh, can't wait to hear more about this. It sounds like the agenda is a secret weapon for negotiators.
It's definitely a powerful tool, and when used effectively, it can help you achieve your goals and create more mutually beneficial outcomes.
So stay tuned for part 2, where we'll unpack the key components of a strategic agenda and how you can use it to master any negotiation.
Looking forward to it. Welcome back. Let's jump right back into those negotiation strategies. Picking up where we left off, the power of the agenda.
Yes, I'm really intrigued by this idea of using the agenda as a strategic tool.
It can really make a huge difference in how the negotiation unfolds. It's not just about listing the topics, it's about setting the stage for a more productive and collaborative conversation.
So walk me through it. How do we create an agenda that gives us that level of control?
Well, there are 4 key elements to a truly effective agenda: problems baggage, what you want, and what happens next.
Okay, let's break that down. What do we mean by problems?
Problems are the roadblocks. The challenges, the issues that are preventing the two sides from reaching an agreement.
So it's about acknowledging those elephants in the room right from the start.
Exactly. It's about being honest about the challenges and getting them out on the table so you can start working towards solutions together.
And it's important to consider the problems from both perspectives, right?
Absolutely. You need to understand your own problems and the problems the other party is facing.
So, for example, if I'm negotiating a new contract with a vendor, my problem might be I need to make sure they can deliver on time and meet our quality standards.
Right. And their problem might be we need to make sure we have enough lead time and resources to meet those demands without sacrificing profitability.
By putting those problems out there, you create a framework for a more open and honest conversation.
Exactly. And it helps to build trust and understanding between the two parties.
Now, what about baggage? That sounds kind of heavy.
It can be, baggage refers to all those pre-existing beliefs, experiences, and biases that we bring into a negotiation.
Oh, like those past experiences, that might be coloring our perception of the other party.
Exactly. We all have baggage whether we realize it or not. It could be a bad experience with a similar company in the past, or it could be a personal bias based on someone's appearance or communication style.
So how do we deal with this baggage? Do we just ignore it?
Ignoring it is not the solution. The key is to be aware of your baggage, to acknowledge its potential impact, and to consciously try to set it aside so it doesn't sabotage the negotiation.
That's easier said than done. Those past experiences can really stick with you.
They can. But remember, you're not negotiating with the ghosts of the past. You're negotiating with the person sitting across from you right now.
That's a great point. It's about focusing on the present moment and the opportunity to create something new.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that the other party is also carrying baggage. They might have their own preconceived notions about you or your company.
So it's about creating a space where both parties feel safe enough to let go of those past experiences and focus on the current negotiation.
Absolutely. Now, the third element of the agenda is what you want.
Okay, this is where we get to lay out our goals and objectives, right?
Right, exactly. But it's not enough to simply state what you want. You need to explain why you want it, how it aligns with your overall goals, and what benefits it would bring to both parties.
So it's about painting a picture of a win-win scenario.
Exactly. You're not just making demands, you're presenting a vision for a mutually beneficial outcome.
So if I'm negotiating a salary increase, I wouldn't just say I want a 10% raise. I'd explain how my contributions have benefited the company, how I'm planning to continue adding value, and how that raise will allow me to stay motivated and engaged.
Exactly. You're framing your request in a way that highlights the value you bring to the table and the benefits of reaching an agreement.
And that makes it much more compelling for the other party.
Absolutely. Now, the final element of the agenda is what happens next.
So this is about clarifying the next steps and making sure everyone is on the same page.
Exactly. It's about outlining the process, assigning responsibilities, setting deadlines, and making sure there's a clear path forward.
So we avoid those situations where everyone agrees to stay in touch,
Yeah.
but then nothing actually happens.
Exactly. It's about ending the negotiation with a concrete plan of action and a shared understanding of what needs to be done next.
And the book even suggests negotiating the agenda itself, right?
Absolutely. It's about presenting your proposed agenda to the other party, inviting their feedback, and making sure they feel comfortable with the structure and the topics to be discussed.
That makes so much sense. It shows respect and transparency and creates a more collaborative atmosphere.
Exactly. It also gives the other party a chance to add their own items to the agenda, which can be incredibly valuable.
Because it shows you're genuinely interested in their perspective and their needs.
Exactly. And you know what? This process of negotiating the agenda can actually be a mini negotiation in itself. It sets the tone for the entire discussion.
So if you can approach the agenda negotiation with a spirit of collaboration and respect, that sets the stage for a more productive and successful negotiation overall.
Absolutely. Now, there's another really interesting technique they suggest incorporating into the agenda negotiation. It's called a fairness statement.
A fairness statement. What's that?
It's a simple statement that reinforces your commitment to a fair and transparent negotiation.
Give me an example.
You could say something like, if at any point this information doesn't seem relevant or valuable to you, just let me know and we'll move on. Fair enough.
Oh, I like that. It gives the other party permission to speak up if they're feeling lost or confused.
Exactly. And it subtly reminds them that you're not trying to pull a fast one. You're committed to a fair and open discussion.
And it also gives them a chance to practice saying no, which, as we discussed earlier, is an incredibly powerful tool in negotiation.
Exactly. Now, the book provides some really great examples of well-structured four-part agendas for different scenarios.
Oh, I'd love to hear some examples.
Well, let's say you're going into a parent-teacher meeting.
Oh, those can be nerve-wracking.
They can be. But a well-structured agenda can help you stay focused and achieve your goals.
Okay, so what would a 4-part agenda for a parent-teacher meeting look like?
Well, in the problems section, you might list things like, my child is struggling with math, or I'm concerned about their lack of participation in class.
Okay, so you're identifying the specific issues you want to address.
Exactly. In the baggage section, you might acknowledge any preconceived notions you have about the teacher or the school, or any past experiences that might be influencing your perspective.
So, for example, I had a negative experience with a teacher at this school in the past,
Yeah.
and I'm worried that might be affecting my perception of my child's current teacher.
Exactly. By acknowledging that baggage, you're signaling to the teacher that you're aware of your own biases and that you're open to hearing their perspective.
That's a great way to build trust and rapport right from the start.
It is. Now, in the what you want section, you would outline your goals for the meeting. This might include things like, I want to develop a plan to help my child improve their math skills, or I want to better understand the teacher's classroom management style.
So you're being clear about what you hope to achieve.
Exactly. And remember, you want to frame your request in a way that highlights the benefits for both parties. So instead of just saying, I want my child to get better grades, you might say, I want to work together to create a learning environment where my child can thrive and reach their full potential.
That's much more collaborative and appealing.
It is. Now, in the What Happens Next section, you would outline the next steps. This might include scheduling another meeting, setting up a system for communication, or assigning responsibilities for implementing the plan you've developed.
So you're ending the meeting with a clear plan of action and a shared understanding of what needs to happen next.
Exactly. Now, another scenario where a 4-part agenda can be incredibly helpful is in a job interview.
Oh, that's a great idea. I never thought about using an agenda in a job interview.
It can be really effective, especially if you're interviewing for a senior level position or a role that requires a lot of negotiation.
Okay, so walk me through a 4-part agenda for a job interview.
In the problems section, you might address any concerns the interviewer might have about your qualifications or experience.
So, for example, I know my resume shows a gap in employment, and I want to address that up front.
Exactly. Or, I'm aware that I don't have direct experience in this particular industry, but I want to highlight my transferable skills and my eagerness to learn.
By addressing those concerns head-on, you're showing that you're self-aware and proactive.
Exactly. And it gives you a chance to reframe the conversation in a more positive light.
Now, what about baggage in a job interview?
This could include any preconceived notions the interviewer might have about you based on your resume, your online presence, or even your appearance.
So, for example, I know my social media profiles might raise some eyebrows, but I want to assure you that I'm a professional and I take my work very seriously.
Exactly. Or, I'm aware that I'm not the typical candidate for this role, but I believe my unique perspective and experience would be a valuable asset to your team.
It's about acknowledging those potential biases and presenting a more nuanced and complete picture of yourself.
Exactly. Now, in the What You Want section, you would outline your career goals and how this particular role fits into those goals. You would also discuss your salary expectations and any other benefits or perks that are important to you.
So you're being transparent about your needs and your aspirations.
Exactly. And remember, it's about finding a mutually beneficial arrangement.
And finally, in the What Happens Next section, you would discuss the next steps in the interview process, such as follow-up interviews, background checks, and any other requirements.
Exactly. It's about ending the interview with a clear plan and a shared understanding of the timeline and the next steps.
Wow, this 4-part agenda is incredibly versatile. I can see how it can be applied to so many different negotiation scenarios.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the specific content of the agenda, it's about the mindset it creates.
What do you mean?
By taking the time to structure the conversation in this way, you're signaling to the other party that you're thoughtful, prepared, and committed to a successful outcome.
And that sets a positive and collaborative tone for the entire negotiation.
Exactly. It also helps you stay focused on your goals, manage your emotions, and avoid getting sidetracked by distractions or irrelevant details.
Now, I'm curious, are there any situations where a 4-part agenda might not be appropriate?
That's a great question. There might be some informal situations where a formal agenda feels too rigid or unnecessary.
Like negotiating with your kids over bedtime?
Exactly. Or maybe you're having a casual conversation with a colleague about a potential project collaboration. In those cases, a more informal approach might be more appropriate.
But even in those situations, The principles of the four-part agenda can still be helpful, right?
Absolutely. It's about being mindful of the problems, the baggage, what you want, and what happens next, even if you're not explicitly outlining those elements in a formal agenda.
So it's a way of thinking a framework for approaching any negotiation with clarity and purpose.
Exactly. Now, in addition to the four-part agenda, there are many other powerful techniques you can use to enhance your negotiation skills. And one of the most effective is the art of asking insightful questions.
Oh, yes. Questions are so important in negotiation. They allow you to gather information, uncover needs, and even subtly influence the direction of the conversation.
Exactly. But not all questions are created equal.
But what makes a question truly insightful?
Well, first of all, it should be open-ended. You want to avoid those yes or no questions that can shut down the conversation.
So instead of asking, do you have any budget constraints? I might ask, what are some of the key factors influencing your budget decisions?
Exactly. That open-ended question invites the other party to share more information and gives you a deeper understanding of their perspective.
And it avoids putting them on the defensive, which can happen with those pointed yes or no questions.
Exactly. Another important characteristic of an insightful question is that it should be focused on the other party's needs and interests.
So instead of asking what's the best price you can offer, I might ask, what are your top priorities in this negotiation? What are you hoping to achieve?
Exactly. By focusing on their needs, you're signaling that you're not just trying to get the best deal for yourself. You're genuinely interested in finding a solution that works for both parties.
And that can create a more collaborative and trusting atmosphere.
Absolutely. And you know what? Sometimes the most insightful questions are the ones we ask ourselves.
Oh, that's interesting. What do you mean?
Well, before you even go into a negotiation, it's helpful to ask yourself some key questions.
Like, what do
Well, first of all, what are my true goals for this negotiation? What am I really hoping to achieve?
That's a good one. It's easy to get caught up in the details and lose sight of the bigger picture.
Exactly. Another important question to ask yourself is, what are my non-negotiables? What are the things I'm absolutely not willing to compromise on?
Those are my deal breakers.
Yeah.
The things I need to walk away if the other party won't budge on.
Exactly. And by defining those non-negotiables up front, you're setting clear boundaries for yourself and avoiding getting caught off guard in the heat of the moment.
That's so important. It's about knowing your limits and being prepared to walk away if necessary.
Absolutely. Now, another key question to ask yourself is, what are my assumptions about the other party? And are those assumptions accurate?
Oh, this goes back to that idea of the blank slate mindset, right?
Yeah.
Challenging our own biases and preconceived notions.
Exactly. And the more self-aware you are, the better equipped you'll be to approach the negotiation with clarity and objectivity.
Now, once you've asked yourself those crucial questions, you're ready to start asking questions of the other party. But it's not just about the content of the questions, it's also about your delivery.
Absolutely. This is where the concept of nurturing comes into play.
Nurturing in negotiation. That sounds a bit counterintuitive.
It might seem that way, but creating a sense of comfort and ease can actually be a powerful tool in negotiation.
Because it's not about being manipulative or trying to trick the other party into liking you.
No, not at all. It's about creating an atmosphere of trust and respect, which can lead to more open communication and ultimately a better outcome.
So how do we create that nurturing atmosphere?
It starts with paying attention to your body language. Are you leaning forward tense and eager to interrupt, or are you sitting back relaxed and truly listening?
Oh, I can definitely see how body language would play a huge role.
It does. Are you maintaining steady eye contact, showing that you're engaged and attentive, or are you fidgeting and looking distracted?
Those nonverbal cues can speak volumes.
They can. And it's not just about appearing nurturing, it's about genuinely feeling that sense of calm and composure.
So it's about managing our own emotions and approaching the negotiation with a sense of inner peace.
Exactly. And you know, there's a saying in negotiation, the only person who absolutely must feel okay in a negotiation is the other person.
Wow, that's a powerful statement.
It is. It's about shifting your focus from your own anxiety and need to control the outcome to creating an environment where the other party feels heard, respected, and understood.
And when people feel safe and comfortable, they're more likely to open up and share their true needs and interests.
Exactly. And that can lead to more creative and collaborative solutions.
Now, I'm curious. You mentioned that it's not just about appearing nurturing. It's about genuinely feeling that way. How do we cultivate that inner sense of calm and composure, especially when we're feeling stressed or anxious about the negotiation?
That's a great question. It's about managing our own energy and emotions.
So it's about doing that inner work before we even step into the negotiation room.
Exactly. It might involve practicing mindfulness meditation or other relaxation techniques. It might involve getting enough sleep, eating nourishing foods, and exercising regularly.
So it's about taking care of ourselves so we can show up as our best selves in the negotiation.
Exactly. And sometimes the best way to manage our own anxiety is to acknowledge it.
So it's okay to say, I'm feeling a bit nervous about this negotiation.
Absolutely. In fact, expressing vulnerability can actually build trust and rapport. It shows the other party that you're human, that you have feelings, and that you're not trying to hide anything.
And sometimes just naming those feelings can help to diffuse them.
Exactly. And it can create a more authentic and human connection with the other party.
Now, you mentioned that nurturing is about creating a sense of comfort and ease. Are there any specific techniques we can use to create that atmosphere?
Absolutely. One technique is to use humor appropriately.
Oh, I love it. Humor can be such a great way to break the ice and create a more relaxed atmosphere.
It can. But it's important to use humor that's appropriate for the situation and the audience. You don't want to tell offensive jokes or make light of serious topics.
So it's about using humor to build rapport, not to belittle or demean anyone.
Exactly. And sometimes the best humor is self-deprecating.
Oh, like making a lighthearted joke about yourself.
Exactly. It shows that you don't take yourself too seriously and that you're comfortable with vulnerability.
And that can be incredibly disarming, especially in a tense negotiation.
It can. Now, another technique for creating a nurturing atmosphere is to use positive affirmations.
Positive affirmations like those "I am strong and capable" statements.
Exactly. But in negotiation, you would use affirmations that are more specific to the situation.
So, for example, I am confident in my ability to reach a mutually beneficial agreement, or I am open to hearing the other party's perspective and finding creative solutions.
Exactly. Those positive affirmations can help you shift your mindset, manage your emotions, and approach the negotiation with more confidence and optimism.
And they can even subtly influence the other party's perception of you.
Exactly. Now, another powerful technique for creating a nurturing atmosphere is to use what's called a positive strip line.
A positive strip line. What's that?
It's about ending every statement or question with a positive phrase that encourages the other party to say yes.
Oh, that's interesting. Give me an example.
Instead of saying, "Do you have any questions?" you could say, "You're probably wondering about insert key point or concern, and you should. It's an important detail, and you're right to focus on it. Fair enough."
Oh, I like that. It validates their concerns and subtly encourages agreement.
Exactly. Or instead of saying, "Can we schedule a meeting next week?" you could say, "Scheduling a meeting next week would allow us to dive deeper into this and ensure we're on the same page." Does that work for you?
It's like you're leading them down a path of agreement.
Exactly. And the book claims that this technique almost never backfires.
Really? Why is that?
It taps into our natural inclination to agree with positive statements. It's like you're subtly influencing their perception of the negotiation, creating a more collaborative and agreeable atmosphere.
It's like you're planting seeds of agreement throughout the conversation.
Exactly. Now, another important aspect of negotiation is knowing when to hold back information.
Oh, right. We talked about this earlier, the dangers of premature disclosure.
Exactly. But there's another angle to this, knowing when to refrain from giving formal presentations.
Oh, interesting. So those carefully crafted slideshows and speeches that many people rely on in negotiations.
Exactly. While presentations can be valuable in certain situations, they can actually be detrimental in the early stages of a negotiation.
Really? Why is that?
Well, presentations can sometimes put the other party in a judgmental mode. They're sitting there listening to you present your ideas, and they're more likely to be focused on finding flaws in your proposal or coming up with objections.
So it's like you're setting yourself up for critique.
Exactly. And it can create a more adversarial dynamic, which is not conducive to building trust and rapport.
So when are presentations appropriate in negotiation?
They're most effective after you've done your research, build a strong vision for the other party, and address their key concerns.
So once you've laid that foundation of understanding and trust.
Exactly. And even then, it's important to keep presentations concise, engaging, and focused on the other party's needs and interests.
So it's not about showing off your knowledge or dazzling them with fancy graphics?
No, it's about clearly communicating how your proposal can help them achieve their goals and solve their problems.
And it's about framing the presentation in a way that invites collaboration and feedback.
Exactly. Instead of saying, "Here's my proposal, what do you think?" try saying, "I've put together some ideas based on our previous conversations. I'd love to get your feedback and see how we can refine this together."
That's much more inviting and collaborative.
It is. And it shows that you're open to their input and that you value their expertise.
Now, another critical aspect of negotiation is identifying the real decision makers.
This is so important, especially in complex negotiations involving multiple stakeholders.
So it's not always obvious who's calling the shots.
Exactly. Titles and organizational charts can be deceiving. Sometimes the person with the most authority isn't necessarily the one making the final decision.
So how do we uncover the hidden influencers and decision makers?
It requires a bit of detective work. You might observe who's asking the most insightful questions in a meeting, or who seems to have the final say on key decisions.
It's about reading between the lines and paying attention to those subtle cues.
Exactly. And you know what? It's also important to build relationships with everyone involved in the negotiation, not just the person at the top.
Because you never know who might have influence behind the scenes.
Exactly. And sometimes those seemingly less influential people can become your biggest advocates.
So it's about networking, building relationships, and gathering as much information as possible about the power dynamics at play.
Exactly. And once you've identified the key players, it's crucial to understand their individual motivations and concerns.
So what are their goals? What are their fears? What are their priorities?
Exactly. By understanding those individual dynamics, you can tailor your approach and your messaging to resonate with each person.
So it's about personalization, right?
Yeah.
Crafting your arguments and your proposals to appeal to each stakeholder's specific needs and interests.
Exactly. And this can be especially challenging in complex negotiations where you might have competing interests, shifting alliances, and hidden agendas.
So it's like a game of chess, right? You need to anticipate your opponent's moves and develop strategies to counteract them.
Exactly. And you know what? Sometimes the best strategy is to simply be patient and persistent.
So it's about playing the long game.
Exactly. Identifying the real decision makers and building those relationships takes time and effort.
It's not something you can do overnight.
Exactly. But by taking a strategic approach and consistently demonstrating your value, you can build trust and credibility that will pay off in the long run.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from the power of no to the importance of nurturing the art of asking insightful questions, the strategic use of agendas, and the crucial concept of the four-part budget.
Absolutely. That's where we'll pick up in part 3 of our deep dive.
Okay, I'm really interested to learn more about this four-part budget. It sounds like a crucial element for negotiating success.
It is. We'll explore how to manage your resources, avoid overinvestment, and make smart decisions throughout the negotiation process.
So stay tuned for part 3, where we'll unlock the secrets of the four-part budget and equip you with even more powerful tools to master the art of negotiation. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into negotiation. We've talked about so much already, but there's one more thing that's just so important, and that's the four-part budget.
Absolutely. This is all about recognizing that negotiation is an investment, and just like any other investment, it requires careful planning and resource allocation.
So we're not just talking about money here, right?
No, we're talking about 4 key resources: time, energy, money, and emotion.
Okay, so not just money then. Like I can see how all 4 of those play into it.
Oh, absolutely. And the key is to manage those resources effectively,
Right.
to avoid overinvesting and make sound decisions throughout the entire process.
Okay, so let's break this down. How do we budget our time in a negotiation?
It starts with setting realistic deadlines and timelines.
Okay.
You don't want to rush the process, but you also don't want to drag it out unnecessarily.
So it's about finding that sweet spot, giving yourself enough time, but also,
Yeah,
setting some boundaries.
exactly. And it's so important to factor in time for research,
Great.
preparation meetings, follow-up, and even potential delays or roadblocks, because
Oh yeah, things don't always go according to plan.
they never do.
Yeah.
And it's important to have some buffer time
Okay.
built into your schedule to accommodate all those unexpected twists and turns that pop up.
Now what about budgeting our energy? Because I know,
Oh, yeah.
negotiation could be so draining.
Incredibly, both
Yeah.
mentally and emotionally. So it's important to pace yourself, take breaks when you need them, and delegate tasks when possible.
Oh, delegation. Yes. That's something that I think a lot of us, are kind of control freaks about.
I know.
Uh,
I am too.
If you have a team, leverage their strengths.
Right? Exactly. If you have a team, use them.
Yeah, don't try to do it all yourself.
Don't try to be a superhero.
What about those times, though, when you're feeling totally drained and depleted? How do you bounce back from that?
Well, it's crucial to recognize those signs of burnout
Yeah.
and take steps to recharge.
Stepping away from your desk, going for a walk.
Exactly. Anything
Yeah.
that helps you clear your head, refocus, and come back with renewed energy
Yeah.
and clarity.
Now, budgeting money, I mean, that seems pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah, it is in the sense that you need to set clear financial limits
Right.
and stick to them.
Knowing your budget up front and walk away if you have to.
Exactly. But it's also about understanding the true costs involved.
Okay, so not just the price tag.
No, it's also about things like travel expenses, legal fees, consulting fees, and even the opportunity cost of your time.
Right. All those hidden costs that you might not think about.
Exactly. And it's important to factor all of that into your overall budget.
Now, the fourth one, the budgeting emotion.
Yeah.
I mean, this is
How do you even quantify that?
it's definitely the most challenging resource to budget, but it's also the most important.
Because our emotions can get away from us so easily in these situations.
Absolutely. When we get too emotionally invested in a specific outcome, we're just so vulnerable to making irrational decisions.
You get caught up in the heat of the moment and, make an impulsive concession or,
Totally.
sabotage the whole thing.
Exactly. So how do we budget our emotions effectively?
Yeah. How do we do that?
Well, it starts with self-awareness.
Yep.
Understanding your own emotional triggers.
Right.
Those things that tend to push your buttons and make you lose your cool.
So knowing what sets you off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's also about recognizing the signs that we're becoming too emotionally invested in the negotiation.
So your heart's racing or your palms are sweating or...
Totally. You're starting to get defensive or angry.
Yeah.
All those things are signs that it's time to step back, take a deep breath, and regain your composure. What if you're dealing with somebody who is being highly emotional? What do you do then?
Well, that's tricky.
Yeah.
But it's important to stay calm and centered yourself.
Okay.
Don't mirror their energy. That will just escalate the situation.
So you're kind of the grounding force.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, sometimes the best way to deal with someone who is highly emotional is to just acknowledge their feelings.
So, I understand why you're feeling this way.
Exactly. That simple act of validation can often diffuse the situation and just create a more productive dialogue.
And sometimes maybe taking a break, right?
Absolutely.
To let everybody kind of cool off.
Exactly. Now, the book uses a formula.
Oh, I love a good formula.
Oh, me too. To illustrate the relative importance of each budget item.
Okay, what is it?
They assign a multiplier to each resource, with time being the least costly at 1x, energy at 2x, money at 3x, and emotion being the most valuable at 4x.
So emotional overinvestment really can have the biggest impact
Absolutely.
on your decision making.
It's like that old saying, follow your heart, but take your brain with you.
Right. You got to have both.
Exactly. And, this reminds me of a story about a guy named Jerome who was leading this major negotiation for his company.
Okay. What happened to Jerome?
He was given a huge budget and a lot of autonomy,
Oh, wow.
which felt really empowering at first.
I bet.
But as the negotiation dragged on, Jerome found himself working all the time, burning through his energy and just becoming increasingly emotionally invested in the outcome.
So he was so focused on winning
Yeah,
that he kind of lost sight of everything else.
exactly. He was neglecting his family, his health, even his own well-being.
Oh, no.
And you know what happened? His boss ended up taking over the negotiation and completely sidelined him.
So all that time and energy and emotion just down the drain.
It's a cautionary tale about the dangers of overinvestment and the importance of just maintaining a balanced budget throughout the entire process.
And knowing when to walk away.
Absolutely.
But we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We really have.
From the power of no to the importance of nurturing the art of asking insightful questions, the strategic use of agendas, and of course that crucial concept of the four-part budget.
It's been an amazing journey.
I feel like I'm ready to negotiate anything.
That's great to hear. Remember, negotiation is a skill that can be learned and honed over time.
Absolutely.
The more you practice, the more confident and effective you'll become.
And the real power of negotiation lies not in manipulating or outsmarting the other party, right?
Right.
It's about building those genuine connections, understanding their needs, and finding those solutions that create mutual benefit.
Absolutely. It's about approaching every negotiation with a spirit of collaboration, a commitment to fairness, and a willingness to learn and adapt along the way.
So go out there, embrace the art of negotiation,
Yes.
and unlock your potential for success in every aspect of your life.
Until next time.
Keep diving deep.